Hey TCS, it's Matthew, the Cybersecurity Officer for this semester. Today we'll be doing a lab using Kali Linux and Metasploitable 2. Metasploitable 2 is going to be run in the background today. It is a intentionally vulnerable operating system. It is created by the Metasploit team. It is used to test security researchers and test out vulnerabilities and how to exploit them. To begin, all that we're supposed to know in this lab is that the Metasploitable 2 operating system is running on the same subnet as our Kali Linux box. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. So let's go ahead and figure out our IP address. Alright, so we have three different adapters here. This is the loopback address. This is the first adapter, which isn't giving us an IP address. And then here's the second one. This one actually gives us an IP address under IPv4 and IPv6. So the IPv4 address, we can see that there are 4 octets. So the last octet just kind of tells us which device on the subnet we're using. And then this third one tells us the subnet. So as we know from earlier, the Metasploitable 2 operating system is running on the same subnet. So let's go ahead and scan our subnet to see what devices are running. To do that, we're going to use Nmap. Nmap is a network enumeration tool used to scan networks, ping networks, and scan versions. So first, we're going to do scan network, SN, and then we're going to type the subnet. So like before, it is 192.168.225, and then we're going to do .0 because that's the beginning of the subnet, and then /24. So /24, that is the basically telling Nmap that we're going to scan the whole subnet. Go ahead and click enter here. Alright, so it gave us a few different reports here, a few different hosts, and we'll be going through here just to figure out which one is the one that we're looking for. So let's start with the first one. So Nmap, and then let's type in this first address. So 192.168.225.2. Alright, so we did get a report here. So it shows that the domain service is open on port 53 using the TCP protocol. So this isn't the system that we're looking for, but just looking at the system and the service that is running, this is giving us our domain resolution service, basically mapping IPs to actual host names. So let's just go ahead and look past this one. Let's go to the next one. So let's do an Nmap scan. 192.168.225.132. Alright, so this is the system that we're looking at. This is the Metasploitable 2, and this is just all the services that they have open on the system. So today, like I said before, we'll be looking at the File Transfer Protocol service. Just looking at their system, we can tell that they have the FTP service, SSH, Telnet, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, the domain service from before, the HTTP service, and then VNC, and a few different ones. So let's go ahead and figure out the version that FTP is running, just to see if it's vulnerable. So there are two ways that we can check the FTP version, the File Transfer Protocol version. First, we'll be using Telnet, and I'll show you both of the ways. So if we use Telnet, type in the specified IP address, and then FTP, which is the service name, and then click enter. So here it's a bunch of different gibberish, but here it actually shows the version of the VSFTPD service, which is 2.3.4. Now if we quit out of here, and then let's go ahead and figure out the version another way, which is also using Nmap. So if we type in Nmap, and then let's specify the port, which is port 21. And then let's do SV, which is short for service version. It finds the service version. And then let's type in that IP again, which is the host that we're looking at. Alright, so like before, we saw 2.3.4 and 2.3.4. Alright, so from here, we don't really know anything other than the version of the FTP service. So, like all security researchers do and hackers, let's go ahead and do some research. So let's go to Firefox. Let's go ahead and paste and go. Alright, so just pasting in the version, we can tell that there's a vulnerability here. Every listing on Google tells me that there's a vulnerability. So let's go ahead and click this first one. So this website is the National Vulnerability Database, and the NIST database. It shows a bunch of different vulnerabilities, the details of the vulnerability, and then lists them using scores, and then like vector strings. So just a short description. 2.3.4 contains a backdoor which opens a shell, and then it opens a shell on that port. So just to look into it just a little bit more, we can tell that the score is critical 9.8, and then we can look at the vector. So the vector is metrics and statistics of the exploit. AV means attack vector. We can tell that it's on the network, so this is over the network exploit. We can tell that the complexity is really low, and then the CIA triad, all is high. So it means that this exploit is really critical, especially for systems out in the wild used by actual businesses. So let's go ahead and X out of here. So today we'll be looking at the Metasploit framework. So the Metasploit framework is a framework developed by security researchers to let people learn about vulnerabilities and how to exploit them. So what we'll do is we'll type MSF console. This will go into the Metasploit console where we can search vulnerabilities, look up vulnerabilities, and run them. Alright, so let's go ahead and just search the vulnerability to see if they have it in their database. So VSFTPD. Alright, so we have two right here. We have the first one, which is an auxiliary, and then the second one, which is an exploit. So let's look at the first one here. So the first one, the description is VSFTPD, and then 2.3.2. So that's not the vulnerable version that we're looking for here, but we can see that the first one is a denial of service attack. But the second one here is running VSFTPD 2.3.4, which is the vulnerable version that our server is running. And then it's the backdoor command execution. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this one. So on the left side, we can see that there's numbers, and then it gives us like a little tooltip down here, so we can use one. So if we type in info one, it's going to give us a little bit of info, similar to what we looked at earlier, and then just gives us a little bit of the description. Alright, so let's use that exploit. Alright, so right here, we're logged into the exploit. Now let's look at the options. Alright, so here's a few different options. We can tell that there are two that are required, and the other ones we don't exactly need here. So the first one that's already filled in for us is the port of the service, the remote port. We've already saw from the Nmap scan that FTP is running on port 21, so we don't have to change this. But our host is blank, so we'll have to fill that one. To do that, we'll type in set our hosts, and then we'll type in the IP address of the target system that we've been scanning this whole time. So 192.168.225.132. Alright, so let's type in options again, and we can see that it actually added to these settings. And then since there's nothing else required, let's go ahead and run the exploit. Alright, so we can tell that it is on the vulnerable version, and then the exploit ran, the exploit completed, but it says no session was created. So some exploits are not very stable, so let's go ahead and just run it again. Alright, so we can see a little bit different of information. We can see the port bind listener is already open, and then we can see that the UID, the user ID, and the group ID is root. The system found the shell, and then it opened the shell. This is our port that it opened it on, and then their port that it opened it on. And then now we're already in the system. So if we just type from here what commands we want to send, it'll give us a backdoor. So who am I? Root. And I'm running commands on the remote system. So if I do cd slash ls, here is the root directory of the target system. And then if I go into cd slash home, we can see that we have an FTP, MSF admin, service, and user directory. And then we can do whatever we want in the system from here because we have root access. We don't need to use sudo, we don't need to use anything since we have root access. So today, this was just a basic kind of exploitation video. This doesn't really explain how to find the vulnerability other than just researching a previously discovered vulnerability. So that's what I'd like to get into in the future. But for now, just basic exploitation using Metasploit is pretty good just to see how hackers and people do this out in the wild. Alright, thank y'all for watching today, and if y'all have any questions, feel free to ask me either via email, in person, whatever works for me. Y'all have a great day.